You're live.
Okay, thank you. And welcome to the AIB, Blueprint for Maryland's AIB. Today's date is May the 15th, and we're meeting officially about 1:05 p.m. Call the meeting to order. And the first item for us is a couple of open comments. Let me thank our staff for all of the tremendous work throughout the entire legislative session. It was rather busy. We had some real challenges, and I think that given the circumstances and conditions, we probably weathered those probably as well as we could. There are still some additional challenges that are out there, and we will have an opportunity to review those as we go forward. But given where we are today, I think that the AIB came out of it somewhat okay, in my opinion. First of all, let's adopt the last meeting's minute summary. Hope that we had an opportunity to review them. If so, I would like to entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, there's a motion, there's a second to the motion.
Second.
It's moved and properly second that we adopt the meetings from the last meeting. Are there any questions on readiness for the vote? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, you've had an opportunity to look at the agenda. Are there any changes, adjustment to the agenda? I note, Madam Executive Director, that we have at least public comments. That's the only one we have for today.
Correct.
Okay, all right. There are no revisions. Okay, we will proceed and go directly to item number 2, to public comments, and I don't want to hold them up very long. Raja Gupta from Strong Schools, Maryland.
Good afternoon, members of the Accountability and Implementation Board. For the record, I am Riya Gupta, Interim Executive Director of Strong Schools Maryland and co-chair of the Blueprint Coalition. I'm here to share additional feedback on the minimum school funding waiver process and offer a few concrete steps the board can take to strengthen it, building on my comments from your March meeting. First, I want to thank you for incorporating public input around the community engagement requirement. That was a really meaningful change, but we still do have some serious concerns about transparency, timing, and how decisions are made. One major change to the policy since your last meeting is the shift in the waiver request deadline. The original October 31st deadline made sense. It gave the board time for deliberate review and gave LEAs a predictable window to submit and plan ahead. The revised policy now allows waiver requests to be submitted anytime before June 30th, the last day of the fiscal year, which opens a door to last-minute reactive requests, limits meaningful public engagement, and gives LEAs little room to adjust if their request is denied. This change undermines the structure and clarity the original timeline provided. During the March meeting, you also discussed the need for a bit more structured analysis, and I think the Carroll County waiver process made that need even clearer. I urge the board to adopt 2 basic expectations moving forward. First, AIB staff should review and assess every waiver request through a formal independent analysis. That analysis should show who is impacted, what funding is being shifted, and what the real implications are for students, particularly those identified as at promise. It should also assess the quality of aspects of the request, like the community engagement efforts, since we all know that there are tiers of engagement quality. Second, I want to return to my earlier recommendation that an analysis of the impact on at-promise students be required, not optional, in every waiver request submitted by an LEA. A waiver process that affects one of the Blueprint's core funding protections should not make an analysis like this optional. This doesn't have to be complicated, but it should be required. For those who don't know, this impact analysis I'm referring to is simply a systematic look at how different groups will be affected by a proposed action. It's a standard responsible practice across public policy and budgeting in different sectors, and it helps prevent unintended harm. This is especially important when we're talking about requests to bypass state mandated funding requirements for school districts. Finally, I want to name what's driving these waiver requests. They reflect a broader issue of inadequate funding. If the Blueprint needs to be adjusted to better meet the needs of real needs of Maryland students, the AIB must say so. This board was created to be a truth teller. That means holding the line on standards and being honest about what it will take to meet them. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you taking these comments into consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Gupta. All right. We'll now go to agenda item number 3, state agency implementation plans, and I'll turn it over to our executive director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we would like to start with a recommendation for approval of the joint Maryland Higher Education Commission and Maryland State Department of Education plan on teacher preparation programs. And I'm going to ask Emma Pellerin, our implementation plan director, to provide a summary of that. And we have some slides, and there's also available to you. We have the feedback document, sort of the document you've seen before with the that you've had to review with the recommendation for approval and the specific items that we're raising as follow-up items, or what we call implementation actions. Emma, are you ready?
Yes. And can you see my shared screen? Okay, just
Yes.
double checking. I was having some technical difficulties before. So thank you. So today we have the joint plan to support teacher preparation programs, a recommendation for this plan's approval. This plan was developed by the Maryland Higher Education Commission and the Maryland State Department of Education as required in Blueprint law. And this plan was originally submitted as part of the both agencies' Blueprint implementation plans for 2024. We provided feedback and received an updated plan that we now see meets the criteria for success. As Executive Director Heiss noted, there are a couple of implementation actions to help address some of the areas that we just had some questions about. So I'll go ahead and pull up the recommendation for approval and go over that. Just one second. So this document, similar to the other state agency recommendations for approval, includes a summary of the review process, as well as some identification of plan strengths and areas of opportunity, as well as areas for further growth and improvement, which this really, again, just gets to one of the questions that we have and relates to the implementation actions that are in the recommendation for approval. As noted here, and I'll expand just a little bit to make this easier to read, we wanted to note that the joint plan leverages the existing structures for state and national accreditation reviews of educator preparation programs, and includes the blueprint requirements and whether or not the teacher preparation programs are meeting those blueprint requirements as part of the review process for the state review process, or the reviews done by national accreditors. The plan also provides a detailed schedule of activities that will take place as part of the review cycle over the course of 2 years. I think it's actually about 20 months that this review cycle takes, and identifies how consideration of blueprint requirements will be integrated into this process. It was helpful to see that outline of activities and where the blueprint requirements are being addressed as part of that process in their updated submission. Our major concern, just from the timeline that was provided, again, noting that a strength of the plan was that the blueprint requirements were being assessed as part of the existing state and national accreditation review processes. That is a strength, but that does mean that the timeline for these review processes and the schedule for the teacher preparation program reviews outlined in the plan, this means that the AIB will not know whether teacher preparation programs are meeting these blueprint requirements based on the schedule outline until 2031. based off, again, the schedule, if we were to think about all of the blueprint requirements and reviewing all the teacher preparation programs. And we know that this information is needed as soon as possible. So based on this, MHEC and AIB staff have agreed to integrate, MHEC and MSDE staff have agreed to integrate self-reporting measures of alignment with the blueprint requirements that are part of the annual data collection process for teacher preparation programs starting next year. So this first set of self-reported data will be due by October 1st, 2026. And that's again to help address that concern around the timeline for getting a full picture of whether or not teacher preparation programs are meeting the blueprint requirements as part of this review process. So that is one of the implementation actions that's addressed above here. That is the second one, an integration of self-reporting of providers into the annual data collection on providers' alignment with requirements for educator preparation outlined in the blueprint. And then the first implementation action also speaks to another question that we had. We want to ensure that the results of the state and national accreditation reviews of teacher preparation programs are shared with the AIB. So this implementation action speaks to developing and implementing a process by which those results are shared with the AIB. And that is something that was also discussed with MSD and MHEC staff and agreed on. So that is big picture overview. I'm happy to answer any questions, or we can, any questions that you have.
Are there any questions? I don't see any, Amber. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
We do, Mr. Chair, we do have a motion for approval of the MSD and MHEC joint plan.
Okay. You want to read the motion for me and I'll offer it?
I will. Give me 1 second to pull it up. Okay. The motion would be to approve the MSD and MHEC 2024 joint plan to support teacher preparation programs with the required implementation actions noted in the AIB staff's recommendation for approval.
Okay, I so move. There's a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been second. All right, we're now ready for the question. Are any unreadiness of the vote? If not?
I have a question.
Sure, please.
So Rachel, they have an interim reporting requirement that, what was it, October something of each year?
That refers to the self-reporting. So the
Yes.
teacher preparation programs report to I believe MSD and MHEC, although it might be only one of them, annually in October of each year. And as part of that self-reporting, beginning next year, they will incorporate self-reporting by the programs on their implementation of blueprint requirements.
And we will get a copy of those reports?
Yes.
And so you will routinely assess that they are, the reports are moving them satisfactorily.
We will review them based on the self-reporting, and then we will also receive the results of the accreditation reviews, the more formal process, which will be, more concrete information, sort of an independent assessment of whether they're meeting the blueprint requirements. And there's a schedule for that accreditation review process that, as Emma was discussing, we won't have that information for all of the programs until like 2031. And so receiving this self-reporting on an annual basis will allow us to monitor progress until we receive those accreditation reviews. And staff will definitely be reviewing all of that and sharing it with the board.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions?
Member Stapleton and then Member Lynch.
Yeah, and this is just a question out of curiosity. Are we aware of any educator preparation programs being concerned at all about these recommendations, or any outreach to those prep programs that we're aware of?
We have not, this process has just been between MSD and MHEC, so we have not reached out to teacher preparation programs regarding either of these items. But one of the reasons that we did not have the data, that self-reporting data include blueprint implementation immediately, is to provide time for MSD and MHEC to talk with the teacher preparation programs, work with them, and incorporate into the data collection this information on blueprint implementation. So that is one reason why we did not, because there is a report due in October of this year, and we wanted to give them time to incorporate it and, socialize it with the teacher preparation programs and just work with them around what data is going to be collected. So it hasn't happened yet, but it will happen.
But the collection hasn't happened yet.
Right.
But we hope that those
or
conversations have happened about what they're able to provide by October.
it would not be until October of next year,
Okay.
2026.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
Any further questions?
Member Lynch?
I don't know if this is the correct time, Executive Director Heiss, but I think for this vote, I need to recuse myself, both because of my relationship at the University System of Maryland with our deans and directors programs, and also because I just have not had the opportunity to review this in depth to be able to provide any more comment or information at this time.
Okay, we'll still record that for the record. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? If not, we're now ready for the motion. I have so moved. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, been moved and properly second. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposition? And we will put on abstention as just noted for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
If we can, Emma, go back to the slides. And if you want to provide an update on the other state agency plans that we're continuing to review and work with the agencies to be able to bring them to the board with a recommendation of approval.
Yeah, absolutely. So we still have 3 remaining plans, one from JSEP, CTE committee, and MSD respectively. And they submitted updated plan submissions. They submitted updated plans based off of previous requests for updates based on feedback from AIB staff in March, April, and May, respectively, with JSEP submitting their most recent update in March. The CTE committee in April, and just very recently a updated submission from the State Department of Education in May. AIB staff have reviewed those updated submissions and are meeting with CTE committee staff next week to discuss elements of their updated submission and ask some follow-up questions. And also are considering if additional revisions are necessary for the most recent submission from the Juvenile Services Education Program, JSEP's plan, to meet the criteria for success. And the State Department of Education is also reviewing their comprehensive literacy plan that was submitted as part of their blueprint plan at the same time. And then in terms of MSD's plan, AIB staff, we have met with MSD staff to discuss their updated submission as well as potential next steps. So we're hopeful that we can provide some additional updates and hopefully move forward with those plans very soon.
Thank you. Are there any questions on any of the other plans? Okay.
All right, here none. Let's go to item number 4 then.
All right. The next item is the waiver policy. for the minimum school funding requirements. And if you can go to the next slide. So as you know, the board adopted in March a policy and process for LEAs to submit waiver requests to the AIB. And in that policy, the timeline that was adopted was that LEAs would submit a request by October 31st for in the fiscal year for which the waiver was requested. So in this case, that October 31st date would for the upcoming fiscal year 26, it would be October 31st of 2025 would be the last day that an LEA could request a waiver for fiscal year 26. And that original timeline was in part based on trying to create a process where there was sort of a start and stop for each fiscal year. So for fiscal year 26, we would take requests through the end of October, and then beginning in November, LEAs would request waivers for the next fiscal year, 27, and they would have through the end of October of the next year. In the process of going through the process with Carroll County, one of the thing is that Carroll County requested a waiver for more than one fiscal year at the same time. And in addition, so we wanted to make sure that we were clear in the policy about how that would work. And then in addition, the timeline for requesting a waiver for the LEAs, October is relatively early in the fiscal year for them to determine whether their actual expenditures are on track to meet the requirement. And as we think about the process in a school system, for example, they would, budget for fiscal 26. So they're adopting their budgets now in the counties and in the school systems. They would budget, let's say, to meet the requirement for all of their schools. But the requirement is while the budgeting information gives us some data points to look at to see whether an LEA is planning to meet the requirement and how they're planning to meet the requirement. But it's really the actual expenditures that are what is going to determine whether they meet the requirement or not. It is not budgeted, but actual expenditures that are going to determine whether they meet the requirement or not. And as the school year goes along, particularly for an individual school, it may be that the LEA had budgeted to meet the requirement, but there could be shifts in enrollment, there could be shifts in staff or changes in staffing that would lead a school that was budgeted to meet the requirement to actually not meet it when looking at actual expenditures. And October is pretty early in the school year to be for an LEA to be able to determine whether a school within their district may not meet the requirement looking at actual expenditures. And so as a result of thinking about that further and getting feedback from the CFOs, additional feedback from the CFOs, we are proposing to shift that date from October 31st to the end of the fiscal year. So that would give the LEAs, the maximum sort of amount of time in the school year to identify if a school was not going to meet the requirement and request a waiver. Um, and we do have the policy itself is available, and we can pull that up if it's helpful to show you the specific language that we would suggest changing. We would also suggest being clear that an LEA can request the waiver for more than one fiscal year, but that they need to note the specific fiscal years that they are requesting a waiver for, and they would need to ask for the waiver by June 30th of the first fiscal year that they're requesting a waiver for. And so I'm not sure who is sharing their screen for me right now, but oh, I think it's Emma. Could you pull up the policy, please?
Yes, I'm just
You're working in it?
1 second, working on it. Yeah, just 1
Great.
second.
Thank you. And so just recognizing the comments that were made by Strong Schools and Ms. Gupta earlier, I think that I appreciate their perspective on the timeline, and I think that it is correct that the later in the fiscal year that a LEA requests a waiver, that obviously limits their ability to course correct and change out resources to meet the requirement if they are not on a path to meet it. And obviously, if they're asking for a waiver at the end of the fiscal year, it's done. It doesn't necessarily change the decision. The board would still be faced with making a decision as to whether they felt that the waiver request was justified or not. And then I think I would just offer that the next piece of information would be if a waiver was not justified, but if the board found a waiver was not justified, and a school did not meet the requirement, what are the next steps?
Yeah, but I think that those who may have a problem with this need to realize that there could be very major changes between actual and budgeted. And, you could have big shifts in that, and budgeted sometimes is somewhat aspirational. Actual is what you actually did. And so if you had to err with that, you need to have at least as much hard information as you can, and in order to make an informed decision. And I think that would allow you, I think, a greater latitude of having as much real information as possible on that.
I do see several hands.
Okay.
I believe Member Manco is first.
I think Dr. Lynch was first.
Okay.
I actually thought you were first. So I need, if we could just take a step back maybe and walk through the timeline, because I'm not sure that I'm really following kind of what we're talking about. So are we saying that if a budgeted year starts on July 1, let's take this year, 2025 for just purposes, right? 2025, the school year starts June 30th, 2026, the fiscal year closes. So we're saying on June 30th, 2026, a district could submit a waiver saying that they were unable to meet the requirements within that year. And then we would have, as the board, X amount of time to review that waiver and provide recommendations as to whether or not it was approved or not approved. By that point in time, it would be maybe 30 days past that fiscal year. The policy seems to assume that we will grant all waivers. What happens if we don't and the year is over and they haven't been able to do it? And I'm also just wondering if, because most school districts actually have a closeout period prior to that June 30th day, if they wouldn't have some knowledge in, like, I don't know, February or March as to whether or not they were going to be close to or meeting meeting their targets. I may not be understanding the timeline.
Sure. So let me just ask Emma if you could scroll down to, I think it's section 3, which has just the timeline on seeking a waiver. But Member Litch, in terms of what you described, so the fiscal year ends on June 30th, but the closeout process actually occurs after June 30th. So there is actually a process throughout the summer and into the fall where LEAs and state agencies, in fact, are reconciling their expenditures and their accounting, and for the LEAs, their final reconciled expenditures are required to be submitted by the end of September in their formal financial statements. And then they're required to upload all that information into PowerSchool by the 15th of October. So just to be clear, the closeout process actually happens after June 30th. But to your point, LEAs will, of course, have information throughout the year as they are, and as will AIB and MSDE staff as they are reporting their actual expenditures on a monthly basis into PowerSchool. It lags a little bit, but that data will be available. And in particular, there will be that MSD submits a report to AIB in January each year, providing the status of actual expenditures during, up to that point. So they will have information to know whether they're on track or not. It also could be that something occurs after that point that sort of, a principal goes on leave, someone, teachers leave, that, particularly personnel staffing is going to have the biggest effect at the school level in terms of meeting the actual expenditures, meeting the requirement. So, I think there is the possibility that events will occur at any time in the school year, which might lead a school to not meet the requirement. And I'm just talking about an individual school, not groups of schools or more broadly across LEA wide, that something might occur where they would want to ask for a waiver because they weren't able to meet the requirement. The policy does not speak to whether the board will or will not approve waiver requests. That is totally in the board's discretion. I think the
Can
issue,
I ask a question? Is like, what happens if we don't? Since it's
right? That's, yes, exactly. So I think if you, regardless of at what point in the year you don't approve a waiver, I think the question is the same. So the board may get a waiver request in October and deny the waiver request, and then LEA may say, we can't meet the requirement. We can't, so we're just going to proceed, and the board will still be in the position of determining what do we do about schools that don't meet the requirement. And I think that gets into the progress monitoring process and the decision on release, the annual decision on release of funds that are automatically being withheld under the blueprint. I think that the board would need to determine, as they are assessing whether LEAs are making sufficient progress in blueprint implementation, if there are schools that are not meeting the requirement, to what degree that weighs into that a decision about whether funds are released or not. And just as a reminder, there's the December 1st deadline for the AIB to provide a warning to any LEAs that are at risk of having funds not released.
I'm going to let my colleagues speak, I think I have real concerns about this because it seems to put us in a position where either we would be forced into approving all waivers or having, sort of putting districts in a position in which they would have to have funds withheld without any chance to rectify. Like if we're doing this sort of after the fact, it doesn't really allow for that course correction. And it also sort of makes progress monitoring and everything else, sort of performative acts and not, truly sort of how we are supporting districts in getting to those goals. I'm a little bit concerned about that this doesn't help districts in the way that we think it may. And there may be another opportunity to think about extreme circumstances. I think we should acknowledge that. But I just have concerns, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleagues.
Member Manco, I think you were next.
Yeah, I have similar concerns to those that were posed by Dr. Lynch, and yet at the same time, I mean, you're absolutely correct, Rachel. At the end of the day, whether a waiver is declined in, mid-November or in mid-June, if the LEA is not able to meet the requirement, then the choice for the board is the same, right? We would have to make a decision either way on how to move forward, and one of those options being the withholding of funds if we feel like that's what's warranted. So I guess my question is there's some kind of language that could be added just around, and I know this is very tricky because you want to be able to leave enough flexibility if there are these kind of emergency situations that were unforeseen that occur towards the end of the fiscal year. But, it does seem like as a board, if there is a impending waiver, we would want to know as soon as possible. And then that way, as Ms. Gupta was saying, there is some chance to provide some degree of technical assistance or course correction, or, at least put a plan in place. So I don't know to what extent that is able to be added, that that it is the recommendation of the board that waiver requests come in as be submitted as soon as practicable. I don't know how the language reads, but it does seem like some type of statement around trying to get that information as quickly as possible so that the board is able to make a decision on it would be important.
It says no later than, Joe. It says no later than Member Manco.
Sure, but yeah,
They probably wouldn't wait till the last minute, but it says no later than.
I could see saying something like in B that we could start it out with saying something like LEA shall submit a waiver request as soon as practicable in the fiscal year and no later than, something like that.
Sure. Yes.
And maybe, and potentially to Member Lynch's point, possibly something about extenuating circumstances, that may occur later in the fiscal year, that
things that are unforeseen. Sure.
Something like that. And Ms. Dutterer might be able to come up with better language than what I'm suggesting.
Sure.
Yeah, that language sounds great. I just think I'm in a different document than the one that's on the screen, so it's not going to show up. But if I think,
can someone make sure Heidi has the right link, or that Emma's in the right document, so that, that would be helpful. While we're doing that, think Member Stapleton.
I was next, and then Vice Chair Kerwin. I have similar concerns to Member Lynch. It seems to me like this is lowering a bar. I mean, these dates are the leverage that we have to, alert the LEAs and the public that it looks like things aren't going to plan. And from my understanding, that October date was selected because shifts in enrollment can occur, especially at the beginning of the school year. And so once the beginning of the school year starts and you realize, oh goodness, we have not staffed up the way had we known the shift
Okay,
would be here, we would have staffed up.
I'm back to get my,
So I'm
get my ring.
concerned that this is just going to create a culture of LEA saying, oh, it's okay, we'll just wait till the end of we can throw in a waiver request. I don't think we want to do that. I think we need to show that, all right, if you have good reason, if there's been an enrollment switch or some other extenuating circumstance by October, then we could request or we could initiate a waiver. But after if you things are going the wrong direction by October, you better start working in the right direction. And if it doesn't, if in the end of the fiscal year things are not, you're not meeting the minimum funding requirement, then we have a process where we say in December, we're not going to release the funds, but there's an appeal process, right? So why are we not letting that process handle the potential problem?
So just to clarify, enrollment changes can happen throughout the school year. We take the count on September 30th, and obviously, that's typically when a lot of the shifts occurs in the beginning of school year, but enrollment, kids show up at schools throughout the school year and they
Yes,
have to,
I
have to
concur with that. I'll let the principals let us know what when the major times are.
Yeah, and so that there could still be shifts that come later in the school year, but I think we maybe have sorted out the policy, the right policy on the screen there. So if you can just scroll down again to section C. Emma, thank you. There we go. Okay, great. Thank you. Member Kerwin?
Yes, thank you. Well, I have similar concerns, and what at the moment bothers me about the June 30 is if we deny something on June 30, there is no opportunity for them to make an adjustment. If say we denied something on February 28th, they've got several months in which if their waiver is declined. So the process has sort of logical validity. If we deny the process in February or whatever date, then there is a period of time in which they could make an adjustment. Now, I understand that the concern with October is that they've just gotten their fiscal data, which is an important element in this, in their decision or their capacity, their ability to meet the requirement. And I understand, as you pointed out, Executive Director Heiss, that the enrollment data will change over the course of the year. That's the other variable in this discussion. But if we deny a request, there ought to be at least some period of time in which they could make an adjustment to meet the requirement. So, what if did you give any thought to having the requirement be that it had to be submitted by, say, by March 1, where, then they've got a lot more enrollment data, they've got all their fiscal data, and if we say no, there is at least a period of time in which they could work to meet the requirement. So I'm just raising the question of, to me, June 30th seems problematic because of the no capacity to make an adjustment. So was there any consideration given to say a March 1st date as the time by which they must submit a request?
I asked a question on collective bargaining. When are we most likely to have that and a submission by the executive of the executive budget for most of these communities? Here in Montgomery County, I think it's March. Budgets are not adopted until May and officially June. And there's a huge change that really is going to dictate a lot of what happens. Just take Montgomery County, for example. The big discussion on whether or not they raise taxes. And that went down to today, last minute. Whether or not they would dip into the retirement program. That's a huge shift in terms of decision making. And that doesn't become final. I think they just take a straw vote on it right now. They're going to get final until the end of this month or the first of next month. And so
that's for the next fiscal year or the
Yeah.
current fiscal year?
Starting
For
July
the-
1.
So the
For the next
so
fiscal
by
year.
October that would be known.
Hmm?
I worry, Vice Chair Kerwin, about the suggestion for March because
No. That's which fiscal year are you making reference to? I'm sorry.
That would be for
26.
for fiscal 26. That would be
Yeah.
for the upcoming fiscal year. So
Yeah.
we would be asking them to submit. Right now, the policy is submit in October of the fiscal 26, the budget that is being approved now.
Right.
Which would allow for staff hiring to address the issues that if a waiver is denied, there would be time to actually change allocation across schools in terms of staff. But it's Member Doss's turn.
Thank you. My question is short, sweet, and direct. So how does this change benefit the students who are most impacted by minimal school funding?
I guess it depends on how they make the allocations. Because you look at the shift of how they adjust the personnel. I think we were looking at Carroll and we looked at a plan that made an adjustment at the elementary level? No, which one we had first, high school, elementary? And you could probably see that going forward. I think that will be the area for which you have the greatest notice on that. Where do you have your personnel?
Okay,
Of the students of Ed Promise students.
okay. I'm just concerned about pushing that timeline out so late that you miss many months of whatever of being able to put things in place to just benefit those students.
Yeah. Well, it's a balance. There's a little bit of risk either way on this. So, and we're not doing this in perpetuity. So whatever decision we make, once we've had some experiences with this, it can in fact be adjusted. So it's not in concrete in perpetuity. You can never change it, but you want to get it as right as you can. So that's the good thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have at least a little bit of experience one way or the other, whichever decision you make.
I think that part of the consideration is, and to the chair's point, the policy right at this moment where we have LEAs that are, have this multi-year runway to meet the requirement, and what when you want to receive waiver requests from LEAs that suggest that they can't meet the requirement for groups of school, for individual schools or groups of schools, versus over time, there will be these unforeseen circumstances in schools that may occur later in the school year, and what process the AIB will use for those situations, which over time will be, honestly, I think the bulk of waiver requests once we get through these initial years of meeting the minimum school requirement sort of in the first place. It's going to be the schools that are redistricting. It's going to be the schools that experience enrollment shifts, later in the school year. It's going to be schools that potentially have staffing situations that were not foreseen, where a school doesn't meet, and can't meet the requirement, and just for that year, for that school, and what the timeline is for those requests. So it could be that we have two timelines possibly. Something for those unforeseen circumstances that might be a different timeline than more generally, to the point that you're all raising.
Well, let me go back. I don't think we should have but one timeline. If you want to write in some circumstances, couch that language, but more, we'll just start putting more different timelines in. I think that would be confusing and somewhat counterproductive, but we can couch the language on whichever one you select and put some language in that will provide some clarification on it. But I wouldn't suggest we put two different timelines on it. One with explanation or whatever you want to do. My view is that
Okay.
you get another shot at this at some point, see how the practice of any goes, and we can adjust going forward.
Member Lynch, I believe your hand was up next.
Member Robinson hasn't gone yet, so I'd like to let him go first.
I had a question about something you just said, Madam Executive Director. So when you talk about the runway, in what fiscal year would you expect the nature of the request to change from? Yeah, I'll just leave it like that. And what is the time frame that in your estimation, is when the nature of the types of waiver requests would change?
I mean, they could happen the unforeseen circumstances can happen anytime, obviously, but under the policy, the joint policy, the LEAs, without a waiver, have to meet the minimum school funding requirement for all their schools by the end of fiscal year 2027. So my best guess is that we would see more of those types of waivers after fiscal year 27. So in fiscal year 28, that would be the bulk of the waiver requests, as opposed to the more broader waiver requests.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Member Lynch?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to sort of rectify a lot of this in my head, because I understand the logistics of boots on the ground, right? It's very difficult mid-year to start to say, I'm going to start moving teachers from one place to another because a need has shit. Like the actual logistics of doing that work, and the disruption that could actually occur to schools and to children and to families could be significant. And I want to honor that. And at the same time, I am concerned that the June 30th date offers no accountability and really puts districts at risk of losing the next year's funding should their waiver be declined for some reason. And so I think it just puts districts at risk, and really sort of ignores the urgency that we already feel to make sure that our students are being served, and that the dollars are moving the way they were intended to move by legislation. I agree with Vice Chair Kerwin that perhaps we could consider a later date. I would offer that we would want to be able to do it in a way that would allow for changes to happen within that school year. So perhaps like a January date before the fourth quarter starts, something that would actually allow for either adjustments or conversation to happen, that even a waiver would say, I can't do it this year, but here's our plan. It would set forth that there is a plan in place. And I'm concerned that by June 30th, no plan had to have been put in place for now or for the future. My next question is there possibly, I know we talked about not wanting multiple things, but one to be a waiver of, I'm looking at what I currently have in this school year by October 31st, and I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. And the second is some sort of a process by which, due to unforeseen circumstances, we were unable to meet the requirement, and that would be reviewed separately. Is there such a thing in which it could just be separated into two different processes?
Well, the problem is you have to first start off by defining what are unforeseen circumstances that would be fair and equitable across the board. Let me ask a question on the time between when you submit the information. How long of a runway would you have between October 31st and when the actual boots on the ground? How many months will we actually have with that, Rachel? How much time? How much time?
And I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry.
If you stayed with the October 31st deadline, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are the maximum amount of time you have before you had actual real numbers? How many months would that have taken before that plan goes into effect?
For a waiver request that would be due by the end of October, they would basically have 1 year of data, 1 month, I'm sorry, 1 month of data. The month of September would be the only actual expenditure data that LEAs would have to base whether they felt like they might need to request a waiver.
The waiver for what, for how far in advance will that waiver be covering the minimum? What would that be? If someone asks for a waiver in October of this year, the impact on that would be, the earliest would be what?
It would be for the rest of that school year. It would be for the school year, 25-26 school year. Yeah, fiscal 26, the 25-26 school year. Yeah. But I think the part of the issue is that they really would only have 1 month of actual expenditure data in the school year to base whether they needed to request a waiver or not, which is part of the rationale for moving the date later in the year. If June is too late, it could be March, it could be January.
Yeah, what about the question that Vice Chair Kerwin raised, and we moved it to a somewhat in between?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would work. Mm-hmm. I do still think that there could be things that occur after that date that we either need to have another process for, although as Member Lynch has suggested, or LEAs will just, if they're not going to meet it for certain schools, they're just not going to meet it, and there wouldn't be an opportunity to ask for a waiver.
Well, we need to make it pretty clear, move into various dates and having to come up with what unforeseen circumstances may be. That creates more confusion, and be a bright line, clear. If you want to go to a second date, somewhere between those two, that may be a reasonable compromise. If you want to suggest it, Dr. Corey?
Yeah, I would.
Before you do that,
I'm sorry.
Please.
I was just going to suggest, I think this has been a really very good discussion. And this is not time sensitive in the sense that, you know, at the moment, LEAs do have until October to request a waiver for fiscal year 26. So if it might be better for us to continue discussing
Okay, that's a good
options, and
question.
we could,
I
and then
like that.
we
All right.
could work
No
on
problem.
language and we could even share it and also get other feedback from LEAs and the CFOs, and then come back with a revised draft at the June meeting.
Okay, well, the idea would be a date in between and see how that, once you had a chance to circulate that around, get feedback, and we'll come back on it. Okay? All right, let's go to the next question then. If everyone's okay with that, we'll defer that into further consideration. And we'll get some feedback from it and come back and propose an ultimate date once we've received that information. All right, let's go to the next question here.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is consideration of a joint career ladder policy. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull the agenda back up here. Yes, so item 5 on the agenda is
Right.
the proposed joint career ladder policy. And we do have, thank you very much, slides. And so, as I think everyone is aware, during the 2025 session, funding for collaborative time for teachers, additional collaborative time for teachers has been paused, or as some of the legislature are calling it, a pacing of the phase-in of collaborative time, which now will begin in fiscal year 2029. However, the career ladder, you know, continues to be implemented while collaborative time specifically is paused. The career ladder is not paused, and the work to implement level 4 of the career ladder for educators is continuing. And the LEAs have been piloting, some LEAs, I should say, have been piloting some of the level 4 roles and responsibilities in the current school year. But part of the submission that LEAs must make by July 1 of this year does include building out level 4 of the career ladder for teachers in the first 2 tiers of the career ladder, which is lead teacher and distinguished lead teacher. The third tier, which is professor distinguished teacher, has been deferred until a later date at this time. And so while some LEAs will not be ready to move ahead with level 4 roles in the upcoming school year, they are still required to provide the roles and responsibilities for level 4 teachers and to implement other components of the career ladder. So as we're thinking about, and as we've been thinking about what those level 4 teaching roles and lead teacher roles, distinguished lead teacher roles look like, we've been seeking feedback on what the pilots that some of the LEAs have been doing in this current school year are telling us about how it's working. Next slide. And so Anne Arundel County is the district that has piloted level 4, and those level 4 teachers are meeting the requirements and are being funded for that work. In the funding lags a year, so they've been doing the work in this current school year, they'll be funded in fiscal year 26. Sorry, can you go to the next slide again? It just flipped back. There you go. So for Anne Arundel County, they have been piloting their lead teachers in 12 elementary schools this year. The structure has been each principal is working specifically to design the role for the lead teacher in their school. And they have been able to ensure that those lead teachers are teaching 50% of the school day or of their contract day. And in addition, that they are serving in a level 4 leadership role in the rest of their time. This is something that Anne Arundel County has shared in several different meetings and settings, and they have been able to accomplish this 50% in this current school year. And my understanding is that they are planning to continue and expand these pilots at 50% in the next school year. We do have other districts that have been piloting components of level 4 this year, but are not officially piloting them in the sense that there's additional funding through the career ladder that they'll be receiving for those teachers. Next slide. In some of these other districts that have been piloting components of level 4, they have noted the challenge of meeting the 50% teaching time, and that there is not enough time in their day to both teach 50% of the time and then have enough time to fulfill the level 4 responsibilities of a teacher. There's just not enough time. And that is something that AIB and MSDE have been hearing from several districts. And given that collaborative time is paused, and again, pausing collaborative time doesn't pause the career ladder, but it does affect those percentages, because just as a reminder, under the blueprint, collaborative time is the goal of collaborative time is to move from teachers, all teachers, regular classroom teachers teaching on average 80% of the time down to 60% of the time. So reducing their time in front of students in the classroom so that they have time to do other things, mainly collaborate with their peers and specifically work with, identify, diagnose, develop interventions, and work with small groups of students to support their learning. And so when a lead teacher is now at 50%, it's sort of part of that continuum of we want to move from 80% for all teachers to 60% for all teachers to 50% for lead teachers as you move up the career ladder. But those teachers don't necessarily have that additional collaborative time because we're not funding that right now. And so what you're really looking at is a shift from theoretically 60% teaching time to 50% teaching time. So just a 10 percentage point change in time availability to do the level 4 role, which is not enough time. And so what we've been discussing is whether we could provide flexibility for LEAs in the upcoming school year to pilot their level 4 lead teacher and distinguished lead teacher roles in a way that would set a minimum teaching time of one course or one subject throughout the academic year, which could be less than, and likely would be less than 50% of the time. And to give LEAs a space to innovate and pilot at different school levels and with different level 4 responsibilities, and with different amounts of teaching time, what these level 4 teaching and lead responsibilities, how it could work. And so that is the impetus for the proposed joint policy that for consideration by AIB today and the state board at their next scheduled meeting later this month. Can we go to the next slide? Because there we go. And then the goal of these pilots would be to learn from what the LEAs are doing, what is working, what is not working, and potentially inform recommendations to the statute or policy. But ultimately, the 50% is in the statute when everything is fully implemented. So that if the 50% were to be recommended to change permanently, that would need to be a legislative change. There might be other changes that wouldn't require legislation potentially. And so that is also the goal of this sort of learning year that is being proposed for the upcoming school year. I see a hand, and I also want to give Member Robinson, who's been involved in work.
Okay, Justin,
opportunity.
Robinson, why don't you go ahead and go from here? We got to get started on this. So, you have questions, comments?
Sure. Okay. All right. So I guess if we could go to the next slide, that would be helpful.
Is that the joint policy? There we go. And can you make that bigger, please? Nope. Back one.
I don't know if I can actually make it bigger in
Just
this
pinch it.
presentation
Just
mode, to
pinch
be
it.
perfectly honest.
It was big enough.
So
Okay.
Yeah, we're okay.
I apologize. And I'm also having trouble going back now.
Right.
So just give me 1 second.
Okay. Okay. You could also share the policy if that's easier. Either one.
Okay.
Whatever you can share.
Okay. I'm trying. 1 second.
Yeah.
Do you see the joint policy on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So hello again, everybody. So had a good chance to have some discussion around this topic from Executive Director Heiss. Thank you. I guess I wanted to elaborate on some of the statements in the policy, starting with the first one, that the policy references teaching and co-teaching. And so I guess kind of what I wanted to say is that the blueprint defines what a teacher is. It says a teacher must be a public school employee who is primarily and accountable for teaching the students in the class. And so I think what it means to be a teacher is pretty clear in the law, but we do recognize that there are other teachers who are primarily responsible and accountable for student progress, let's say in special education or in English language development. So special educators and teachers of multilingual learners are primarily responsible and accountable against the goals in the IEP or for progress on tests like WIDA. And so the purpose of including this language for one, including the language co-teacher here, is so that we don't exclude multilingual learner teachers or special education teachers. For point two, I would say that one of the most validating pieces of feedback from the pilots, and again, as Executive Director Heiss has said, Anna Reynolds has had a chance to share some of their feedback from the pilots in different settings. I remember Prince George's has also shared in a different setting as well. And one of the most validating pieces of feedback from the pilots is the idea of credibility when educators work as coaches or curriculum specialists. So having coaches who also teach is important. The pilots have a floor of one course, but level 4 teachers in the pilot should have a maximum of 50% of their working time devoted to teaching in the classroom. The feedback from across the state has varied. As shared earlier, some LEAs may have been able to add FTEs, but for those LEAs that are sort of modifying existing non-classroom roles, this flexibility is important. Let's say an instructional coach is currently completely out of the classroom, and they have this expectation of supporting multiple schools throughout the district. The 50% has been a challenge for them. And so learning more about how this coaching work can continue while also maintaining credibility with the foot in the classroom is optimal. So pilots are about seeing what can be done. And so we're not necessarily saying we're changing the 50% goal. We're just putting a floor in there to make sure that we can begin the conversations of what would look best for schools. Point 3, there are statutory salary increases, and so they'll be eligible there. And then the last thing I'll say just for point 4 is that I think it's especially important for teachers maybe in high schools who might teach semesterized classes or something like that. Sometimes it just isn't an option to teach a full course for the entire year. We don't want to penalize those individuals. So teachers would have to teach the entire year, but it's possible that the group of children that you're teaching in those cases might change. Okay. So that's kind of, I guess, the main thing. And obviously, as was already stated, the pilots will be reviewed to see if that means making any statutory recommendations for changes.
Thank you, Member Robinson. I appreciate that. Member Doss, you have a question? Or a
Yes.
comment?
No, thank you. I just wanted to ask, how are we being provided with the feedback on the pallets?
So at this point, the information has been shared in specifically and mostly in the community of practice meetings that AIB through the technical assistance grants this year has been supporting a career ladder strategy lead, and they have been convening a community of practice monthly and at various meetings, as Member Robinson noted, Prince George's County has shared their experience. Anne Arundel County has shared their experience, as well as advisory committee, Pillar 2 advisory committee has also, this has been a topic that they have discussed in advisory committee meetings, as well as just sort of staff to staff conversations. When the career ladders were, when the board was approving, the IB was approving career ladders for this year, we specifically noted that we were going to ask for information and data around how the pilots worked this year. We haven't asked for that yet. We were waiting until the end of the school year to ask for that. So, but we will be receiving for the current school year specific information and data on those pilots. I think we have a couple of other LEAs that on a smaller scale are also piloting in Kent and I think Charles County this school year. So we will get formal feedback on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Member Lynch.
Thank you. I really do love the idea of allowing flexibility in a pilot. And I will offer, sort of having been in schools for quite some time, even teaching one class all year long while you're also helping developing teachers do their own lesson plan, co-teaching with them, providing observations is a lot, so even teaching one class is a lot. I would encourage us to maybe even allow pilots that think more broadly about classroom time, in that co-teaching, time that you're spending in the classroom, as opposed to actually being a lead, being the teacher of record. Because I think we want our lead teachers to have the opportunity to be in the classrooms, supporting and developing exceptional teacher leaders across a multitude of different environments. So I really do, I am thankful. I would suggest that we have a way that we are collecting data uniformly so that it isn't just anecdotal, but that we're really looking at perceptions of teachers who are being supported in these models. How are they feeling about this level of support? Or is there any indications around student outcomes? What is feedback that is coming from the actual lead teachers themselves? So that we can think about, how did we choose 50%? Is that the right number? Is there any minimum number? Is the credibility in teaching itself or in the services that you effectively provide?
Thank you. So we have been working on also a template or a way to collect information, to your point, that is consistent and not anecdotal, for both the current school year and then for the next school year, and what the pilots that we're talking about in this policy would look like. So absolutely. And I think that I do just want to acknowledge that, yeah, to your point, even teaching one course is a lot. And also that actually having that classroom experience and that instruction experience is a sort of a critical piece of the blueprint. So sort of how do we be flexible, but also stay true to how the career ladder was designed. The 50%, I will just reiterate, it is in statute. So ultimately the 50% is something that that the law calls for. The fact, this is part of, I think, the process that AIB has. We've been talking about this over the past couple of years. Like, in order to recommend a change, we want to statute. We want to make sure that we have the data and the information that supports whatever recommendation is being made. That shows that it would support better, more implementation of the blueprint, but also acknowledge that it is this policy does not negate the 50%. So certainly a district that is has been able to, or has worked hard to achieve this ability for teachers to be in the classroom 50% of the time and doing the level 4 responsibilities. Just want to acknowledge, that Anne Arundel, has developed a model that accomplishes that, and that we can also learn from that and share out that information and those strategies with other districts, so that and this policy does not change that the 50% is a perfectly valid amount of teaching time, and in fact is what the statute calls for. Member Manco?
Yeah. I love the idea that we have this pilot period where we can go through and we can do some additional learning, because I think we'll see variations of this across the states, and hopefully come to some understanding on which processes are more effective, or which work better within for various groups of students, or within certain age bands and things like that. Just for clarity, for point number one, in instances where, and I'm thinking about situations where I've seen this this type of teacher support happen, and just trying to get some clarity on whether this fits inside or is outside of what is intended through the lead teacher role. But individuals who are co-teaching with other teachers in the classroom but aren't necessarily the teacher of record for 50% of their time, that would be an instance in which an individual is within the bounds of the lead teacher role, or do they need to be a teacher of record, is one question. And then for the second, when you talk about working with, responsible for the academic progress of a group of students, is there any distinction on how large that group should be? Like if a lead teacher is coaching half their time, but the other half of their time they're responsible for, pulling, 2 intervention groups, and they're, providing very intensive support to, 2 groups of 6 students consistently throughout the day. That would fall within the bounds of what is expected of the lead teacher, or are there some constraints around, how many kids they should be working with, and to constitute that classroom time?
So on your first question, I just want to point out in number 2 in the policy, it does specifically state that they have to be the teacher of record.
Okay.
So that is in the policy.
Okay.
In terms of the size of the group, I'm not sure that there's that level of detail in guidance, or that's been discussed at this point. I would defer to educators, I would say, on including those of you on the board and on staff that, might, if you have something else to share around that question. That's something we can follow up on.
Any other questions?
Member Lynch, is your hand still up?
No, it's still up. I just have I have 2 quick things I want to add. I think when the blueprint for Maryland's future was developed was pre-COVID. It was in a different time of conditionally licensed teachers, teacher vacancies, budgetary constraints. And so in different times, I think thinking about the 50% may have looked and felt a little bit different. I actually have the converse concern right now, because we are seeing across the state that professional development offices and professional development teachers are being put back in the classroom due to these extreme shortages. And so the availability of leadership and development that's happening at the schoolhouse is becoming more and more difficult for districts to actually achieve. And we know how critical that this is to actually developing teachers, retaining teachers, building competencies so that we have excellence across all of our schools. So I am actually concerned that our professional development experts, our lead teachers, are being pushed back into the classrooms and not being given sufficient time to actually do the development and the planning and the research that they need to bring best practices to their teachers, and to actually spending that time. So I have the converse, not that they should be in the classroom more, but that we should really be protecting their time more to not be put into the classroom, whether that's temporarily as substitutes or more permanently into the classroom. And so I don't know if there's a way, as we're collecting data in these pilot years, if we can consider that as well, like how much of that time ends up being protected time that they can actually achieve the work they need to achieve. And then the other thing I'll offer is that I think this is a good opportunity for collaboration between higher education and local school districts and MSDE to think about how higher education can be supporting lead teachers and that development and credentialing that work and providing coaching and mentoring, professional development, because it's more than just to be a lead teacher. You have to be nationally board certified. So you automatically have a certain amount of experience. You've been in the classroom for 3 years at least, there are some other things. But being a lead teacher and really coaching others requires an entirely new set of skills. And so I'm also interested in learning how we are developing lead teacher skills instead of just identifying lead teachers.
We have to be a little bit careful, because we're setting the parameters that some of this is probably subject to some level of collective bargaining and the input of MSDE, so that we have to be very careful about how far we go in our directions and analysis of this. We want to set the minimum requirements here and work through this process and give them some level of flexibility. And this is why you see that it states as at a maximum in some places, a minimum in some places. So some jurisdictions may do something different, and that's what the pilot is for. If there are some suggestions, I think we need to coordinate that with them so that we are actually dealing with what is happening in the classroom itself. But we can't go too far in terms of what we are actually saying and doing in the classroom. But we can set the broad parameters here of what it looks like. And we have to, this is joint, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, this is joint. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
This is a pilot.
It's a pilot for the upcoming school year. Yep. Member Robinson?
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that Member Lynch just shared really resonated with me. As many of you probably know, I'm an instructional coach as well. And Member Lynch brought up the idea about how sometimes people in central office as coaches or whatever, job title you have might be sent back into buildings to deal with vacancies and things like that. I just wanted to share that actually did happen in our district where every coach was sent back into the classroom. It was about 3 years ago, because of the high number of school vacancies. And Member Lynch's point is well taken that, when you take away that sort of like institutional memory or knowledge and know-how, professional development suffers and the ability to coach teachers suffers. So I definitely, that's well received. I just like to offer that at the end of the year, when people return to their coaching jobs, there wasn't a single person who I met, and we're talking dozens, like if not over 100 people. There wasn't a single person who I talked to that didn't decide to coach differently based off of their experiences. And so I think that while coaching is important and it happens, I think that the quality of it is important as well. And I think that the quality is different the more divorced you are from what's happening in the classroom. When the coaches went back into the office, they said, "Oh, the curriculum, we got to change this thing in the curriculum. We got to do this differently with how we coach, how we engage our schools and our first and second year teachers." And so I think your point is well taken. I just also think that there is like a base level of understanding that that people in curriculum offices need to have to effectively support teachers. And I don't think that always happens if they stay too far away from the classroom. So I definitely support keeping one foot in the classroom. Like I do it every day. I mean, it's hard and I'm not saying it's easy at all, but I think it's necessary. And I do think, just like what Anne Arundel teacher said and what PG has shared as well, I do think that the quality of the coaching is different. I think the credibility is different as well with the teachers we support. So your point is valid, but I just want to give that different perspective as well.
Okay, any other further comments?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We do have a motion.
Yes.
Would you like me to read that?
Well, you have the proposed joint policy before you. And I'm not going to read through the entire policy itself, but I'm going to offer it as a motion, which we would coordinate with the State Board of Education. So I'm going to move the policy, so identified, I got a number, an item 5, I think it is, for approval. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, been moved and properly second. Okay, we're now open for any further discussion, insights, input as it relates to the motion that is now on the floor. Okay. All right, seeing none. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion is so adopted. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is we have a panel from 4 of our counties to talk further about career counseling implementation. And I'd like to turn this over to Rachel Amstutz, the policy director, to facilitate the panel.
Good afternoon, and I am so excited to share with you. We have 7 people joining us, and we've let them know that we're on a very strict time schedule to be able to share all of this with you. So they've been planning their remarks accordingly. Very, very briefly, we are halfway through our spring check-ins with the counties, with all 24, to hear about how year 2 has been going with career counseling, and we have been so impressed by many of the reports that we're hearing back about what's happening. There are so many examples of the strong partnerships between the 3 agencies, of intentional planning, both with curriculum and career explorations and opportunities, and as well as many personalized stories about impact on students planning for their future. So we're really starting to see that year 1, we had to stand up a brand new program, and now here in year 2, we're really taking off. So if I had unlimited time, we would have brought several more people, but we were coordinating schedules, and we had to obviously stick within the block of time that we had. So we're hopeful that our panelists today will be able to share feedback from that they've even heard from other colleagues about statewide implementation, and that they'll be able to give you the big picture of what's happening. In our check-in with Frederick County the other day, one of the participants coined the phrase layers of complexity. And that made a lot of sense in thinking about career counseling. When you bring 3 agencies together and say, hey, we've got a really cool project for you to collaborate on, it has taken some time to sort it out and to figure it out. And so today we've asked our panelists to join to be able to share both success stories and also to just tell you where they are in the process and what they feel it has taken for them to get here. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to our panelists to first introduce themselves. We're going to go in order by county, and for each county, you can go in. Just chime in. You can go in whatever order you see fit. We have asked each person to tell us their name, their role, the agency they're with, and their connection to career counseling in Maryland. So Baltimore County, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the AIB. My name is Mariel Fetty, and I'm the Career Counseling Program Manager with Baltimore County's Department of Economic and Workforce Development. And I'm joined by 2 colleagues. Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm Brian Hammond, Dean of Enrollment Services over here at the Community College of Baltimore County. We oversee the ECAP career navigators that we have in our area. So thank you very much.
I'll turn over to Lacey.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Lacey Roberts. I am transition facilitator for Baltimore County Public Schools, and we uphold the special ed side of the house.
Thank you, Baltimore County. Montgomery County, John.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name is John Hattery. I'm the Deputy Director for Career Education Services at WorkSource Montgomery. My role is to support the department we've created to operationalize the workforce component of the MOCO CAP program in Montgomery County. And I'm going to hand it over to Thomas, otherwise known as Corey.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Corey Turner. I am a career advising coach with MOCO CAP. I am in 2 middle schools, and I'm here to explain what we do and how we get it done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And now to Queen Anne's, Adam.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Tolley. I'm the Supervisor of Career and Technical Education and Career Counseling for Queen Anne's County.
Awesome, thank you. And from Washington County, I'm going to pass it to Andrew. He's joining us to provide a little bit of statewide perspective also on an initiative that he and his colleagues have helped stand up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Andrew McLean. I'm the Career Readiness Coordinator from Washington County Public Schools, and I oversee the Career Coach program for our county, supervising our 18 career coaches in the middle and high schools. And I know, just like Rachel said, I co-lead a statewide group with Laura Brown from Frederick County Public Schools, very succinctly named the Maryland Career Coach Coordinator Networking Group that has met monthly for about a year and a half now as an information sharing and now action-oriented group to share best practices and strengthen our program and advocacy.
Excellent. So you can tell we have a well-rounded group of panelists today. For the first question we're going to pass out, we've identified three responders to reflect each of the three partners who are supporting the work across Maryland. So standing up the career counseling program was a big task, and it did require all three partners, the LEAs, the local workforce development board, and the community colleges, to forge new relationships, enter into an agreement with the MOUs, and to dream about this new program together. So this question is for Baltimore County, our community college perspective. Montgomery County is going to provide workforce perspective, and Queen Anne's County will provide LEA perspective. What do you believe has been the most instrumental component in implementing a successful career counseling program in the Maryland model?
So did you want to start with the Community College of Baltimore County?
Please,
So,
sure.
yes. All right. So thank you for that. So one of the biggest thing for us, it goes back to collaboration. So when we started this model, we're great partners with our Department of Workforce Development, Economic Workforce Development, and Baltimore County Public Schools. What we were able to do was we were able to onboard 3 ECAP career navigators or coordinators. When I say ECAP, we refer to our program as Early College Access Program. So what we were able to do was onboard them into our current Early College Access Program. You may know it as dual enrollment. And what they were able to do was work with the 25 career navigators that are with Baltimore County Public Schools in order to facilitate a program where students were getting the information with the high school and then coming to the community college for a series of events where they can learn more about our continuing education or workforce development classes, our certificate classes, our trades programs. So we would host career expos where they had a chance to not only talk to our community partners, industry, but also learn how the education, the associate degree or certificate that they would receive at the community college could be utilized in the workforce. One of the model that worked best for us was what we always are together. So we always have a joke around here that Fridays are our BCPS dude or economic workforce development day, where we basically spend about 2 to 3 hours together. And we're always in lockstep. We're always in sync. We're not running programs in silos. And I think starting off the program like that is the only way that we were able to get some level of success. So our trainings are run together. Our meetings are run together. Meetings with third-party vendors are run together. We're always collaborating on what we're doing because we know the benefit is for the kids. And one of the things, or the students, I should say, not kids. One of the things that we often do is we try to allow the people that are in the schoolhouse and in the ground to help us drive the decisions. We have a very open model where they come to us and say, we are seeing that the students are needing this. What can you do to get it for us? And we try to, for lack of a better term, stay out of their way and make sure that they have the resources that they need. But it just goes back, and I'm sure our partners would say the same thing. It goes back to collaboration from day one and ensuring that you have that all the way through.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I'll pass it to Montgomery County. John?
Good afternoon again, everyone. So collaboration obviously is one of them, but it really, for us, it boils down to communications and trust, organizational trust. Now, you just don't get to trust. So how do we get there? At the inception, all 3 organizations read the law without editorializing, without commenting. They looked at the law, they decided what it said, what the mission was, and what we needed to do and the structure that we were given to try to achieve that mission. In our case in Montgomery County, that's 87,000 6th through 12th graders. It's a big job. It's a big job for everybody, but the numbers are daunting when you look at Montgomery County. And so when all three organizations sort of read the law and approached it, leaving their organizational egos to the side. We were trying to achieve a mission. There was also a discovery of shared values around recognition that this opportunity only comes along once or twice in a career. And we wanted it to be great. And given the scope of what we were trying to accomplish, we knew that we were going to have to create some things to create the culture, to make the impact. None of us of any of the partners were satisfied with contemplating a test and tell technologically based approach. Everyone wanted it to be creative, wanted it to be impactful, and wanted it to be good. And in the process of creating all of that, that's when the communication came in, the meetings that Brian mentioned. We're guilty of the same. And it's been that sense of collaboration and open communication that I think has been the basis of our success.
Excellent. Thank you. And Adam from Queen Anne's.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly. I will I will echo the same sentiments that John and Brian shared about the collaboration and partnership with the Workforce Board and the community college. We are a little bit unique here in Queen Anne's County in the Upper Shore because our Workforce Board serves 5 counties. So there was that unique aspect where we had to have 5 counties come together to work on our MOUs. And while there is certainly autonomy there between the counties, we try to collaborate as much as possible. So working with the other counties to see what they were doing, and trying to replicate best practices in that circumstance as well. We were a little fortunate too that we had received a grant several years ago from our Upper Shore Regional Council to establish career centers in our high school. So we had a bit of a jump on this process, and the blueprint just kind of accelerated that for us. But it's certainly those partnerships working with our economic and tourism development department in the county has been instrumental in establishing stakeholders and industry and business partners. So it was really, that was one of our huge pieces. And the other piece too was really kind of advertising what this program was and educating people on what we were doing and what we are tasked to do. Not only our partners, but even within the school system, really educating everyone on what we were here to do, what our mission was, and making sure that we didn't overlap with some things that were already going on, that were already being done in the school system.
Great. Thank you, Adam. For our next question, all panelists get to chime in at any order that you would like to, but each panelist was chosen today to come to share a very specific perspective. And actually, I guess it might make sense for me just to go in order. So you saw the email with the order of your topics. So John, this puts you back on the limelight for a second here. And we've given each person only about a minute to share, but you may have questions afterwards and they're going to be happy to answer them. John, can I pass it to you?
Yes, thank you very much. I've been asked to talk a little bit about the data collection and analysis program that we've put together in Montgomery County. As we were building the program, we understood that we were going to need data, hard data, to understand and manage the program. And so we were very intentional about making sure that a student survey is a prominent piece of that, along with our self-report. To date, we've had north of 77,000 student surveys returned to us. And I'm not going to represent that we have 100% response rate either. It's more like 40%. So what we do with that data is twofold. Number one, every single survey, every individual survey is converted into a PDF once it's done on the Google Jot form. And then it's returned to the coaches. Now, I'm not representing them. The coaches look at every single one and memorize every single survey. However, they do look for trends. They do look for requests for one-on-one sessions. They do look for trends as it relates to RIASEC themes and occupations, so they can plan next steps as it relates to assemblies, class push-ins, Meet a Pro events, occupational exploration events, one-on-one small groups, whatever it may be. Additionally, we have constructed the student survey in such a way that we're able to pass that off to our consultant educators cooperative, who has a team member that's doing some extended analysis around impact. And so we can really, through an academically defensible methodology, we can demonstrate that either we are or are not achieving the goals that our program is saying that we're trying to achieve. That data should come, we should have that first level for this year done over the summer, and we'll be happy to share it when it happens. So we have two levels. Really what we're talking about is the penetration data, the operational data that we use to spot trends and make tweaks and improvements. The coaches use it to plan their next steps, and then we have additional analysis to be able to determine impact.
Awesome. Thank you. We're going to pass it to Corey.
Good afternoon. What I've been tasked to explain is the relational aspect that we deliver our information and we navigate school, community, and building the relationships. When we go in, we want to go in with the understanding that we don't know what success looks like with them. So with every student we go in, we try to create engagement and conversations, not just with the student, but the staff, because they know their students as well. So what we do is we kind of canvas the area by building those relationships. We have our cluster leads who work directly with MCPS, and then we also have teacher champions placed within the building that we kind of create a strategic team that goes out, and we begin to then navigate the conversations. And again, because success, I apologize. Sorry.
You're good, Corey. We actually couldn't hear it. It looks like there's announcements at the school, but we couldn't hear it.
I apologize.
I think you can't hear it because he muted him.
It's an occupational hazard. We're familiar, so no worries.
Happens all the time to me.
I apologize. I'm sorry. It's a lot.
Do you want us to come back to you, Corey?
Please.
You got it. Perfect. We will allow for those afternoon announcements to go on, and we will go to Adam.
All right, thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to talk about our 12th grade curriculum integration, what we did this year. So I was approached this summer by my colleague, our English supervisor, about infusing some career awareness units into our English 12 curriculum, and I was absolutely ecstatic to be able to help facilitate that. So we worked with all of the English 12 teachers, our career coaches worked with them. They were given some professional development on our platform that we use, our career awareness platform, which is Pathful. The teachers were able to give the students interest surveys. Our coaches pushed into every single English 12 classroom and worked with the students on resume writing, cover letter writing, for about a week, and we did this both. We're semesterized. We did this both semesters. Each semester, that culminated with a networking event. So all the seniors went to a networking event where we brought in business and industry professionals. We had a photographer that donated their time to do professional headshots for all the students. And then following the networking event, and that networking event was just there to kind of get the kids used to talking to people and shaking hands and making eye contact and building those soft skills that we hear so much about. And that networking event was then followed by a mock interview. So the students had been given sample questions, and they were interviewed by, we had people from the school system, people from all over that came, that showed so much great interest in this, because these are the skills, like I said, that we hear the businesses talk about all the time that they need from our students. There was just such a highly successful event, and we were happy to partner and be able to serve every student who is in English 12, and we plan to build upon that and continue that for next school year as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And Brian, can I pass it back to you about the community college's role?
Yeah, am I still on here? Okay, yeah. So, really, what the community college is doing, like I've mentioned before, is the three ECAP career coordinators. So, what is happening with the? Are you wondering about the data? Yeah. So what we're doing is we're working directly with Baltimore County Public Schools and third party vendors on bringing in and collecting that information and data so it aligns with the programs that we're running in concert with those three groups. So I do want to point out, I'll point to our Career Expo, which we host on campus. The Career Expo onboards about 1,200 students, and through that we try to expose them to different industries which align with our education and our industrial partners. And with that, we're working closely with our partners on seeing if we can take that information and then pull out the data to make sure that students are exposed to all levels in the industry from not only the certificate level, but post graduation employment. So through the funds that we have and through in concert with other groups, what we want to do is pull out some of the data and analyze whether they're really receiving the objectives that we're hoping that they're doing. But we're also doing on a smaller scale when we do host individuals on campus through our unique visits to like our auto mechanics, for example. I know there was a visit with one of our industry partners with Southwest. We are doing some some pre and post survey questionnaires with those students to see what the outcomes are. Currently, we're doing a lot of stuff to use that internally to improve our performances, so we can work with our most notably here at CCBC, so we can work with our Office of Instruction to ensure that the information that we are providing to the students is what we sought out to do at the beginning of the programming.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'm going to get to pass it to Mariel next and a continuation of Baltimore County. But in our spring check-in, she made a comment that said that they were very intentional about looking to upgrade what was already happening with career counseling in their county. And so, Mariel, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so in Baltimore County, we're really capitalizing on the expertise that each agency brings to this collaboration. So our partners, with Brian's team and the community college, really having that expertise in the training that's required by, our local industries, our school district, obviously as the experts in really how to engage and support students in their learning. So yeah, I can discuss kind of briefly how the Baltimore County Workforce Board has really taken on the role then of ensuring that programming is rooted in industry. So our first focus was to really help the career coaches understand the local career pathways so that they can best advise students, on those opportunities and how they can really match with the students' interests. So to do so, we hold monthly all-staff professional development days as part of which, is dedicated to learning about that local industry. So we host an industry panel discussion with a particular high growth, high demand industry, as well as host representatives from the CTE department and the Community College of Baltimore County to really outline the programs that are available to students so that the career coaches get the opportunity to not only engage with local employers, but also discuss workforce challenges and trends directly with industry and leave with resources that they could take with their students that outline those career pathways. And then, Baltimore County's Workforce Board has also really supported integrating the latest job readiness and job search techniques into the programming. So as the local job market has seen like huge changes in the last few years, we were able to really support BCPS in updating kind of their understanding of how resumes and job search approaches to help students understand, things like the applicant tracking system and how kind of the job market has changed. So really we were looking at how do we capitalize on the expertise of each, but also be really intentional, understanding that, you know, while we say that, the career counseling program through Blueprint is new, career counseling has already, kind of been integrated within the school districts. That happens with, I know Lacey's going to talk next a little bit more. That happens with our transition facilitators. That happens with our school counseling department. So we've been really intentional to figure out how can we use this program to expand and fill in gaps and not just duplicate?
Thank you. And yes, we're excited. We met Tracy at the event that Andrew's going to tell you about after Lacey gets to talk. And Lacey represents an important component of the work that we've been talking about with all 24 districts. When it says every middle and high school student in the law, that we really mean every middle and high school student. And so, Lacey, we'd love to hear what you're doing with transition services.
So yeah, just to piggyback what everybody else is saying, we are being fully immersed in the learning experiences and exposing our students at a deeper level. We spend a lot of time with parents and kids and helping them understand and remove barriers from the certificate track to the diploma track, and getting them to think outside the box and be critical thinkers. Also get job readiness skills, find the importance outside of the IEP team, and maybe get a little money in their pockets, which they love. Our biggest challenge, though, that you asked us about is definitely transportation. Although things are with the career navigation are aligned with the special ed transition planning, and we're doing our best to ensure access, a lot of these opportunities that are available at college levels and even employers, transportation is our biggest barrier for getting our students access.
Thank you very much. And Lacey presented about transition support services at the recent statewide event that Andrew is actually going to tell us about the work of the boots on the ground around the state and how they're sharing with each other. So I will turn it to you, Andrew.
Thank you. So again, this convening was a product of the networking group that Laura Brown from Frederick and I co-lead and started back when we were first starting our jobs, because we collaborated with each other and we're trying to figure out how to get off the ground with each of our programs and help each other out. And then, of course, we became curious about what everybody else was doing. And we assumed everybody else was curious about what we were doing. And that was true. And the group is chiefly made up of folks from LEAs and workforce boards who oversee, supervise, direct, or train career coaches. So we've been able to meet monthly at the coordinator, administrator level. And, you know, after a few months, we realized that the coaches deserve this kind of collaboration time as well. And it's not as easy for, you know, hundreds of them to do that. So we knew we had to put something big together. And so Laura and I kind of headed up with the planning committee that was made up from that group. And we ran a full day conference, and people showed up, probably over 360 coaches from across the state, which showed one, that we publicized it pretty well, and two, that people really wanted it to happen. And coaches presented to coaches, administrators, you know, presented to administrators, but we really wanted that coach to coach communication, collaboration, and exchanging of ideas. So the first half of the day was kind of typical conference style presentations, where we had 3 different, you know, slots there and over 15 presentations going on during that time. In the afternoon, we kind of set up in a different format where we just had kind of open, what we called themed collaboration rooms, where we want to just kind of open air discussions to give people space to talk. And so we set up 5 different kind of themed rooms where we got some guiding questions going, but we really just kind of set it up as a roundtable for everybody to kind of share ideas. Because I know in our networking group, some of the best conversations we have are within that last like 20 minutes where we just kind of open up the floors. Like, does anybody have anything for the good of the group? And people speak up and they're like, I got something to say. And then they do. And we have a really, you know, productive conversation. And so we wanted the coaches to benefit from that kind of time as well. So we have a lot to improve on, because we will do it next year. We were very excited, and we have a lot to improve on. We've got really good feedback we have over 30% response rate from our feedback form from the event. And so we're really excited to keep this going and give the coaches more of a chance to collaborate statewide and hear about what each other are doing.
So I apologize, I did not do a feedback form, but it was phenomenal. It was an excellent day, and the energy at the Maritime Institute was just palpable around. It was incredible to hear the sharing. And we have one last question for each person, which is, we've heard some of the programmatic, but now the truth is, are we impacting our kids, and what are you seeing that's working? And so we've invited each of our panelists to be able to share a success story from their perspective, their view, their their county. So this is just whoever would like to go. Who would like to kick us off with your success story?
I'm happy to go first.
Awesome.
So, boy, it was hard to narrow it down. I emailed all my coaches and like, hey, send me your top ones. I've heard them throughout the year. One that has kind of struck me recently was a student from Smithsburg High School. And this student in particular has kind of a family legacy in a certain occupation. So they're receiving a lot of pressure from a lot of their family to go into a certain way and to go out of what they really want to do, which is go into, and it's a female in that wants to go into firefighting and into the fire academy. And their family is very much against that. They don't see the value. But without this career coach, I don't know if the student would have taken the step into applying to the fire academy at our technical high school and volunteering within a local firehouse. And this student has given a lot of all the credit to their career coach for encouraging that, to keep, to matching those talents and interests up with, their career assessments and the conversations that they're having, and kind of encouraging and validating the student's interest and passion for what they actually want to do, regardless of the kind of the pressure and the discouragement they're receiving familially. So, and I've got I wish I had like 30 minutes, but there's a lot of stories like that where things just wouldn't have happened if these coaches weren't there, and they didn't have the time to kind of make that connection and then do the career exploration. A lot of my coaches have expressed that they've been able to spend time making the connection and then have those really meaningful directive conversations.
Awesome. Thank you. Who's next?
Oh, I'll get back to it. Thank you so much again for your time. I can speak to so many different things that we've had. One of my students is in middle school. His family owns a small business that they were expecting him to like manage and learn, which is a great thing. And yet we still talked about it and having those conversations. One of the things that he would always ask me is, Mr. Turner, who cuts your hair? And I'm like, I do. And he was like, are you a barber? And I was like, yeah, I've learned the trade. And so it started in that just high and by conversation. And then now he's picked up the love and passion of barbering. But that's just one in my school. In many schools across our county, we have had conversations with students, and what we've opened up is the imagination of possibilities. And that's the thing I love about doing this career coaching and having it in such a dialogic process where we can have those opportunities to say, what is it that you truly desire? And when we use the RIASEC, and we've been able to unlock personality themes that align with their hopes and dreams and success, and we get a different version of what a chart would say. We get them to articulate. And one thing that you can learn is that when you start speaking what I am in a conversation, you start to believe it. So having them go from I'm expected to be versus to now I am, and I am in the pathway of getting to know this or doing this, and understanding how their workforce theme, that or the thing that suits them best when they look for their next career, that is awesome. And then they get a background from a career coach who has a varied and diverse background. I'm a former educator, a basketball coach, a barber. I'm a small business owner, all these things. So to get them to peel back the onion, to peel back the layers of possibility of who they can be, it's a great thing. So we've had the fortune, and I work with a great team of individuals that help them to just explore and open up and have those conversations. And when they start to have those conversations, the light comes on. And it's better to see them have the ability to come in and say, hey, I can be both a thermometer of my life and the thermostat. I can check my own temperature, but I can also change the temperature and the trajectory of my life. So I'm loving what we're doing here at Moco Cap and how we continue to do this. And I hope that we will continue to press forward as best we can. And I thank you guys for your time.
Awesome. Thank you. Who's next?
I'll go next. In Baltimore County, we're doing a really great job of encouraging our students with disabilities to take that leap of faith. And there are countless, I could not choose one, countless families that did not believe their student would have access that are now gaining access That's why I'm in the job. That's what I love to do. But I want to make you aware that for every one kid that we've encouraged or inspired, their attendance in some cases have improved, their behavior has improved in others, whereas their ability to realize, hey, the adults are human too, has changed the dynamic in the schoolhouse as well. And furthermore, it may change the trajectory for that family to get rallied behind the student. And we have all seen those cases where the family was like, my kid can't really go to college, and then they get accepted and they're on the path, and it totally changes the outcome for that student. And that's what we're seeing in the special ed side of the house. I'm sure you guys are seeing it as well. But for our marginalized populations, which we have a lot of, it speaks dividends for what we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you. Next.
I'll jump in quickly. During the career senior interview event that I mentioned, I was participating in interviews, and I interviewed a student, and she told me we've been taking a lot of field trips to different businesses and different places, and we had just sent our biomedical students to a local hospital, and the student told me that field trip completely changed her thought on what she wanted to do with her career, and she was completely switching up, and she was a senior, and she was completely changing her pathway based on that field trip. So just hearing that from that one student, and we hear so many other success stories of across the district, but that one really just stuck out to me personally.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, who wants to go next?
Yeah, I'll share. So it's been really awesome to be able to see that students are like genuinely excited about exploring these industries through the career counseling program, which is not necessarily something you see every day, right? We've had, a lot of different success in different areas, helping students explore the careers, using like the RIASEC and other tools for them to see like, oh, this one thing that I knew of, I didn't realize that there were so many other pathways and options out there. And success stories of students who, after hearing from an employer, was able to go and get an internship and really figure out that yes, this is the opportunity that they're wanting to pursue as a career. But I wanted to just kind of take a moment to read a quote directly from a student that kind of really touches on the excitement, the hope, and the opportunity that the program brings. So the student said, this field is similar to the one I want to get into. So I thought it was very informative and helped me understand that the field is very vast and not as limiting as I thought. And then a second one that was really awesome was this woman stated that after she had participated in our junior achievement programming, that she spoke to a successful woman who had a similar background as me, and I could really resonate with her and see myself in the future. And then if there's time, I just want to also kind of provide a note that was left by a student that was directed towards one of our career navigators. So this quote really shows the amount of passion, dedication, and creativity that the team has in helping students. And they said, thank you so much for exposing us all to this. It might be your job, but we see how well you're doing it. All of us honestly had so much fun, and it feels like such a great opportunity. So I just, want to thank the board for overseeing this program, which really is helping our students regain the joy and the confidence and excitement in their schooling.
Thank you for bringing student voice. That's powerful. John and Brian.
I can jump in if you'd like. So I can't speak to the impact with students as well as Corey does, and we have so many individual examples. I'm really not going to try. So for the purposes of this part of the conversation, I thought I'd highlight our professional development that we've developed for our coaches at MoCo CAP. We knew that with a unique program design, with the scope and everything else, that we were going to have to be intentional again about how we train our coaches. We wanted them to have the background and the theory and the research as it relates to our reliance on the RIASEC, strengths, interests, and values, and the like. We knew that we needed some guidance and some contact with Montgomery County Public Schools about what it's like to work in a school, the policies, procedures, and the like. And we also knew that we wanted the coaches to be able to demonstrate competency, that they've understood this. And so what we ended up building was an apprenticeship program. and it wasn't our intent to build an apprenticeship program, but in a meeting one afternoon, I said, this is an apprenticeship program. If I had the time, I'd register the standards. Well, as it turns out, we were able to make the time, and with the support of our partners, we were able to get the first standards in the history of the country for the occupation of an education, guidance, and career counselors and advisors. We leveraged that registration of standards with the feds for the Office of Apprenticeship, U.S. Department of Labor, and we've also registered them with the state, with the Maryland Labor Department. The net result is that our folks now have a portable credential. Our folks now, about 30 of the folks are under the federal standards. Almost all of them have completed. About half the folks who were hired after July 1st of last year are working through the state standards, and many of them have reached the 50% mark of their training. And so that's something that I just wanted to highlight to the group. One of the advantages and one of the things that I really thought was really cool about it is that with the emphasis on apprenticeship and youth apprenticeship within the context of the law, for our coaches to be able to say, oh, apprenticeship, I'm an apprentice. I've gone through an apprenticeship. And I also ought to shout out Corey again. He was one of the very first to complete his apprenticeship back late fall last year. So
Great. Thank you, John. And Brian, do you want to bring us home?
Sure, yeah, I will. So I'm not as fortunate as our career coordinators to work directly with the students. I'm in way too many meetings, but one of the most rewarding things I had was when we walked through the career expo. Like I said, it was about 800 to 900 students. We've done it twice, and overheard a group of students talking about before they got in there that really college wasn't for them. They wanted to be an auto mechanic. And then when they got through there and they saw that our industry partners were sitting next to our auto certification and our degree program, and they realized that, yeah, Community College of Baltimore County is for me. College is for me, and I can also be an auto mechanic. And then we were fortunate enough to piggyback those events on with our open house and our financial aid presentation. So we're bringing those students through, and those same group of students, I was able to pull to the side and say, we have an open house, we have financial aid, we have Maryland College Promise, we have Baltimore County College Promise. You too can attend, be a college student, attend CCBC, be an auto mechanic, and leave college with no debt. You stick with us. You stick with your career coordinator, and we'll show you the way. One of those students did come to our open house. We had a chance. It was on the Catesville campus where we have our auto mechanic program. They were able to walk out. We had some EVs on I don't use the other name, but we had some EVs on the quad. We have some GMs and some Fords on the quad, and they were able to walk through the entire program and see what's for them, and then get information on the FAFSA. They were able to do their FAFSA when they were there as well. So sometimes I am fortunate enough to see how we could take that student who says, no, you can't go to college and get your hands dirty at the same time, but no, you can. And we'll pay for it, and you can do your rewarding career. And I think that's what this program is about. And I think the people that are in the schools working with the students, they're the ones that are guiding them through the way. I just hope through this board and through the great work that you guys are doing, we're providing that path and providing an avenue and the resources for them to do it.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. Board members, as you can tell, there's a lot happening around the state in this, and we've really been fortunate to hire some pretty passionate and amazing folks to both lead the programming and planning, but also to implement it with our students and our staff and our communities. We'd love to open the floor to any questions for any of the panelists. Dr. Kerwin. Oh, you're on mute.
I want to thank all of you for your presentation, your enthusiasm, your passion for what you're doing, and what the obviously good work and impact that you're having. When this model was put together, it looked fine on paper, but it isn't going to work unless on the ground the collaborations and connections can be made across people coming from different organizations. And what's so heartening to me is that you've shown it can be done, and be done with great effect. So this has been a really upbeat moment for me on the AIB board to hear from all of you. I really have two questions. One is, to the extent this question makes any sense, what fraction of the students are you reaching with these career counseling programs? And secondly, you're doing great work, but are there things that could happen with the blueprint as it relates to your work that would make your life easier, even? I mean, in other words, are there any things that you would like to see modified to improve the circumstances? So those are my two questions. What fraction of the students are you reaching, and what changes would you like to see?
I can't tell you, this is Dr. Roberts. I can't tell you the reach of our regular ed programs in my building, but I can tell you there's 100% reach for seniors and juniors who have IEPs at my building. And
That's
I know
great.
that because I've met with every single one of them myself. I would say that if you can do anything to help us with transportation to internships and opportunities, that is our big ask. Our follow-up ask is that there is maybe more availability for accommodations in those spaces.
Good. We heard that. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Corey here.
Yeah, Corey.
We had the opportunity to create an event back in March at Montgomery College called a WOW event, where middle school students got to meet with industry professionals and get to experience a lot of things. There were kids working backhoes and things like that. If we could potentially create more opportunities for them by connecting our services across counties and within Montgomery County, and creating more opportunities for that. They don't know what's possible until we show them and they get an experience. My grandmother used to tell me two things people can't take away from you is your education and your experience. Well, we're already giving them the education. I think right now is an opportunity to provide more experiences so that if we can create those connections across many different vocations, I think it'd be a great opportunity.
Good. Let me just ask, so we can move on. Andrew, what fraction of the students would you say you're able to reach so far with this program?
I think we don't have this. I don't have this year's data yet as far as student meetings, but I would venture to say that we are probably between 80 to 90%.
Oh, that's great.
It varies between
absolutely
schools.
Wonderful.
It does vary between schools, based on size and availability. And middle schools, I could tell you that that brings the average down. There's less availability to meet with students in the middle schools.
Right.
It's difficult with their schedules and testing.
Right.
High schools, we're making great strides in meeting with students. A big collaboration and big collaborative spirit there.
Well, again, thank you all. Let me let some of my other colleagues ask questions.
All right, let me just jump in, Dr. Roberts, about the transportation issue. I think this is a common concern, not only with apprenticeship type programs or career programs, but also with pre-service teachers and internships. What out of the box ideas do you have? Like, what could be a solution?
I think that would depend on each individual school system and where they're trying to go, honestly. However, we contract buses to take kids to enclave experiences. We contract buses to take kids to basketball games. I think that maybe people mover sized vehicles that took kids to their internships would be appropriate. I think utilizing the metro where available would be appropriate, but just to alleviate the burden on families where appropriate. I also think that any kind of collaboration we have some pretty rigorous with the airport here. We have some pretty rigorous companies that are taxi companies and the things, and we could probably make some connects with them.
Great, thank you.
I could give one quick shout out here that Caroline County had some leftover funds from year one, which many of our counties did, and they were able to purchase a 15-passenger van. The three agencies all agreed that that was an important use of funds given their rural nature, and they just got it up, all the legalities of purchasing and licensing and all that, but they've put thousands of miles on it already just for the career counseling program. So we've been sharing that as a strategy around the state with other counties, that if that may be a way to help support it, that's one possibility. Dr. Manko.
Oh, I think Dr. Doss was before me.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nako. I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you. This has been absolutely awesome discussion. Not very often do the jobs that you do, the work that you do, doesn't always get highlighted, especially for under Pillar 3 of the blueprint. I do want to actually, if it's appropriate, to give Andrew a shout out. I remember working with him at Frederick Community College. Well, I was at Prince George's Community College, but they were leading in dual enrollment and in early college, and helped us a lot as far as getting our feet on the ground with those programs. And so I just want to say, just take this on the road, continue to highlight your collaboration with workforce development, the community college, and career counseling. And because sharing is just so important. When you're in these types of roles, you kind of get secluded in a way, and you think you're the only one that has these issues, the only one who's trying to overcome some of the things that you deal with, and sharing is just so very important. So thank you again for this presentation.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I had a quick question for John and Corey, just around, I would be interested to hear about your involvement with the school principals, and then how that's impacted the programming that you've done.
You're on mute.
Muted.
So from the inception, we were told from our friends at the central office, Dr. Genevieve Floyd, that each school is unique, each school is different, and that we needed to approach it with a consistent program design, but understanding that it's going to look a little bit different in each school. And the first step in that process of understanding those unique features in each school was to really be intentional about getting our coaches and our leadership and the central office folks in a meeting with the principals as we deployed and as we bring new coaches into the school. That has evolved with a lot of communication, and under the leadership of Dr. Floyd at MCPS, she has gathered a group of principals, almost 60 principals, assistant principals, and school leaders for an event over spring break to sort of get them more familiar with the possibilities of our programming and what we were trying to accomplish. Out of that has sprung a roundtable group, I guess we're calling it, of about 14 principals, both high school and middle school, who are going to start their initial kickoff meeting is on June 6th. And then our hope is that we can use them as a sounding board for new programmatic components, get their feedback so we can do some operational improvements, and keep them informed about what's next with respect to MocoCap in their schools.
If I was to piggyback off of John, I have had the fortune of working with 3 principals who are dynamic, and they are agents of change in their community. They don't want the school to just be in the community. They want the school to impact and be impacted by the community in a positive way. So we work very closely with them. And I see them every chance I get. I have an open door policy with me, and I really appreciate it. And I believe a lot of our schools, because we start off initially with the principals, because they're the captain of that ship, and we come in, we meet with them, we meet with them often. We have open communication and constant collaboration.
Oh, you're muted, Rachel.
Happens to all of us. Thank you. Any other final questions for the panel? Great. Thank you
Not yet
all.
anymore.
Not anymore. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, and thank you for arranging this. It was very well done, and I got a great deal of good information here. And thanks again to the panel.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I think that's it for our formal agenda for today.
Actually, we just have one more section, the executive director update.
Oh yeah,
we
I'm sorry.
No, we this will
I'm
not.
not looking at my. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's right. Yep.
Go ahead.
This won't take too long. Thank you for sharing your screen. Can you go to the next slide? So we just wanted to give an update on recruitment. So we have been, as you know, we have been recruiting for 4 of our open positions, Pillar 1 and 3 analysts, as well as a financial analyst and a Pillar 5 analyst. And we received 134 completed applications and have been doing many interviews. First interviews have been completed, and we are well into the second interview process, and are on track to fill all of these positions. We're very excited with the quality of the applicants that we've received, and are really in the enviable spot of choosing between, multiple well-qualified people. We are aiming to make these decisions in the next few weeks, with the new staff starting in the middle of June is the goal, depending on the timing. And so with that, we will almost be fully staffed, and we'll just have a couple of other positions. Some things are shifting around to fill. We also very recently did bring on a contractual employee, fiscal administrator, to work with our finance director, Alex Vernon, to do all the things. We will introduce everyone to her at another meeting. Are there any questions about recruitment? Okay. The next item is the finance update. Alex, did you want to? Sorry, I'm trying to look for Alexandra here.
I'm here.
Great. Do you want to go ahead and share the finance update?
Sure. I would love to. So recently we provided an opportunity to request no cost extensions through December 31st to the technical assistance grants for all of them, actually, phase 1 and phase 2, for any of the remaining plans, to allow additional time to complete them, as well as modifications to any of the tasks in the individualized scope of works. So the modifications were due May 7th, and we're currently in review status with those. We hope to make decisions by the end of the fiscal year, so we can repurpose and encumber any unspent funds for that targeted technical assistance. And then for office space, our we just received our final floor plan revision for the space. So next steps will be permitting, and then the construction will begin. And in the meantime, we're acquiring quotes for furniture, equipment, other office supplies, and other needs like that. So our projected move-in date is still January 26th, but that is contingent on the permitting and construction time.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. We're very excited to have been able to approve the floor plan so that we can move on. And maybe we'll get in there before 2026. We shall see. Thank you. We have outreach and communications update. And Arshia Sethi Snowden.
Sorry, taking me a second to get everything unmuted. Hi, everyone. Just for some updates on outreach and communications, we are putting the final touches on the 24 LEA implementation progress highlight one-pagers. I'm actually going to show you a preview right now. Give me one moment. Of Alleghenies. These should be posted to the website in the next few weeks. And up for you all. Okay. This models the overall statewide progress highlight one pagers as well. And okay. So oops, that zoomed in a little bit too far. So we will be having one of these for each of our LEAs that shows, just like the statewide ones, the progress in different metrics per pillar, as well as qualitative progress in that LEA for each pillar as well. So every LEA will have a one-pager front and back that will be accessible and shared out, as well as linked to other resources such as the implementation plan, so that people in those districts and the community can review those as well and see the progress that's being made in their specific district. So as I mentioned, those will be going live in the next couple of weeks. We're just putting the finishing touches on those. And let me get us back to the slides. And then other comms updates is that we we're still sending out our monthly AIB updates after the meetings. We're still reaching around 1,000 people or so for each one, averaging a higher open rate on those compared to other emails going out. So it's clear that people are engaging with those and reaching out about information in those as well. These are also posted on our website under the resources page. And just as a reminder, if anyone listening to this wants to join our email list, that's on the homepage of our website as well. And then lastly, our website redesign. We are building it in our new SharePoint templates, which have a lot of exciting new features. The content should be built within the next month or so. And then in terms of launch, we do have to get a timeline from Do It as far as how long accessibility testing will take in that regard. So we should have an update on that soon, since we're trying to get some clarity. But there are a lot of awesome new features that hopefully we can give you all a preview soon, including things like collapsible sections and embedding videos and things that we just haven't been able to do in our previous website, our current website. So those are the updates for outreach and communications.
Thank you, Arshia. Are there any questions? Okay. The next thing we wanted to give you an update on the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan. which, as you know, in the statute, the AIB has to adopt changes to the plan each year by August 1st. So we wanted to launch that process and share the Google form that we have used for the last few years to collect public input and feedback on changes or revisions to the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan. The current plan is available, posted on our website under implementation plans currently. And over the last couple of years, as we've been updating the comprehensive plan each year, we've sort of taken a different approach in terms of, like, after the original plan was adopted in 2022, the 2023 update really focused on the outcome measures, incorporating the recommendations of the outcome measures work group and incorporating the those measures. And then last year in the 2024 update, we incorporated the aligned metrics and the targets that were adopted jointly with the state board, as well as legislative updates. So this year, we, of course, will incorporate legislative updates and changes, of which there are more than there have been in recent years, as well as the public feedback that we receive. But we also wanted to engage with partners who are on the ground doing the implementation, as well as the public, in collecting, really in having more discussion and collecting information on potential changes to the plan. And doing that in collaboration with our advisory committees, since they are, in many cases on the ground, the members of the advisory committees, as well as the folks that present to them or engage in their discussions and their meetings, are deeply involved in the work. And so over the course of the next month or so, through June, each of our pillar advisory committees will be convening an opportunity for public members to share input and suggestions for changes to the blueprint in that pillar area. So you can see on the slide, there are dates and times scheduled now for pillars 2, 3, and 4. We are still working on scheduling pillar 1 and pillar 5, but they will be, likely sometime towards the end of this month or in June. And so then we will be bringing all of that information to the board at the June board meeting and also at the July board meeting for consideration of changes to the plan so that we can adopt the updates by that August 1st deadline. Are there any questions? Member Lynch.
I just have a quick question. I think I've lost track of time. We had a work group on outcome, sort of on outcome measures. We've talked about our interim plan. I'm just trying to keep track of where we just saw like a lovely sort of snapshot of some of the highlights of the successes, but I'm wondering, are we having yearly reports that sort of track all of those outcome data metrics that were sort of either determined and adopted by that work group? Or I'm just trying to keep track of where we all can be finding the data and sort of what is the cadence of that.
Well, I can start, and if members Stapleton or Manco want to add anything, or Ms. Pellerin. So there are a number of metrics that have been identified by the outcome measures work group and incorporated into the comprehensive plan to track progress under the blueprint. The data that is available for that tracking is, available at different cadences. And part of what NORC, the interim evaluation consultant, will be doing is looking at that and helping us, working with us to support pulling all that data together, and analyzing it in a more kind of comprehensive, holistic way. But the individual data is available. For example, for career counseling, we did, I think, share earlier, a couple months ago, some of the data that was submitted in their annual plans last year, and we're in the process of the programs, I shouldn't say LEAs, will be submitting data again this July 1st for the programmatic data, and in October for the fiscal data. So we will then have some trend data that we can share and sort of analyze the trend. And so it's sort of the process of reviewing that data is in part dependent on the cycle of the data. The other thing is we do have the aligned metrics that have been identified, some of which we have set targets already, and others have not had targets set yet. And we have been working with MSDE staff to identify potential recommendations for targets to bring to this board and the state board to set targets for the other aligned metrics. And Emma, did you want to say any more about that?
Yes, I could also just add that we are working on dashboards or visualizations that will also show progress for specific measures with blueprint implementation that will be available on the website once that feature is available. So that is something that we're also working on as well. So it would be one dashboard where you can see progress and through data visualizations across multiple measures for particular districts or at the state level, or for at the district level and at the state level.
That's really exciting, and I think it'll be really helpful. I think we have sort of so many different ways that we're looking and thinking about data on so many different schedules. It'll be really, really nice to have it compiled in an easily digestible way. Thank you so much for working on that.
Thanks for the question. Okay, the next slide is the advisory committee updates, and I remember Manco, and I think.
Yeah, so I think this is going to start with me, and then I'll kick it over to Rachel afterwards. But I think first and foremost, we all wanted to thank all of our advisory board members for this full year of engagement. This has been an important and essential tool for us to help gather input, to disseminate policy decisions, to elevate successes and explore challenges and hurdles as it relates to the blueprint. I wanted to go through just a couple highlights from the various advisory groups, just so that the public is aware of, the great work that each of these advisory committees have been doing. So for Pillar 1, they have gone throughout the year and consistently served as a venue for implementers to share their successes and challenges. This has helped the AIB board and the staff surface areas for additional learning and challenges as it relates to early childhood. Pillar 2 has really focused on elevating a couple critical sharing sessions. For example, they had Carroll County come and talk about their best practices around staff induction. Anne Arundel County Public Schools came and presented about their continuous learning pilot, and Prince George's County Public Schools, they will be presenting at an upcoming advisory meeting around their success at getting more teachers to national board certification. Within the Pillar 3 advisory committee, the group has been real intentional about planning out their calendar strategically over the course of the year and aligning each of the meetings, guest speakers, and presentations around topics that are germane to the input that's needed during that specific time frame. And they've also incorporated voices from the workforce providers, community colleges, and the LEAs. And some of their input and advisement has helped with the career counseling work that we heard about later today. It seems like has just been a real success across the pillars. And then finally, Pillar 4, they've covered multiple critical topics over the course of the year, including the expansion of community schools, reviewing recommendations from the multilingual learners work group, discussing behavioral and mental health supports provided by the Consortium of Coordinated Care, and then also hearing presentations and discussions that have been surfaced by the special education work group. We also this year were able to launch the inaugural Pillar 5 Advisory Committee, and they've done an excellent job going through and covering a multitude of topics, including blueprint funding, minimum school funding, and other critical topics. As you can see from this slide, the larger committee helped to provide an increased number of perspectives. It also has posed some challenges just around scheduling because there's many people who are doing many things that we're trying to get together for one coordinated time. So they're meeting very late into the evening, and we're just really indebted to them for all of their commitment in helping to move that work forward. Go to the next slide, please. So we're currently in the process of continuing to gather responses from the existing advisory committee members to determine whether they are interested in continuing in the role. But as of now, we believe to have the following projected vacancies for each of the advisory committees in the upcoming year. So, really we are looking for 2 vacancies for committee members in Pillar 1, 2, 3, and 4. Along with 1 vacancy for a student member in Pillars 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then additionally, we're looking for 2 student members to support the work of the Pillar 4 or Pillar 5 Advisory Committee. I'm going to go to the next slide and then throw it over to Rachel Amstutz, who's going to go through the process and the timeline around the recruitment and selection for potential advisory committee members.
Absolutely. So as we determine the actual number of seats open, once we hear back from each of our members whose terms have expired to see if they wish to continue to stay in their role, we'll know the exact number and we will publish that via email to our mass distribution list, as well as through social media and a press release, which will share this process and the timeline. We do take nominations, and so nominations or applicants will be able to apply directly through a Google form. We anticipate that form will be open by June 2nd, and we plan to keep it open until June 20th. Nominations we keep open just for a little bit over a week, so June 2nd to June 11th, and then all nominees are notified of their nomination and they must complete an application form with all of the information and a resume if they are interested in pursuing the opportunity. It takes about a month for a subcommittee of board members to be able to review all of the applicants, look at existing members, and figure out how to best place new members. And so we'll be doing that in July, and we plan to be able to present potential new members for board recommendation and nomination in late July or August. So we encourage anybody that's interested to keep monitoring the progress and wait for it to be posted and then apply to be a part of the committees.
Great, thank you.
Further question? Thanks, Joe. Member Manko, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Thank you.
problem. Thanks so much.
And then just to there will be an ad hoc committee of the board that will review the applications and make recommendations to the full board. So the last item under the executive director update relates to the AIB nominating committee. So completely separate from the advisory committees, there is a nominating committee that is responsible for selecting or nominating individuals to serve on the AIB. And this process has occurred a number of times since the initial appointments of board members. And it is that time of year again. So we do have two current members whose terms are expiring on July 1st. And that is member Stapleton and member Manco, as well as a third member who we are sad to say is resigning from the board effective at the end of June. And that is member Doss. And the nominating committee will be soliciting applications for consideration to be nominated by the committee to serve on the AIB. The nominating committee has a meeting scheduled on next week, I believe on Tuesday, where they will be announcing the timeline for applications as well as sharing out the application materials. We will be sharing those with our email distribution list, as well as we'll post information on the AIB website so that it's available for everyone who is interested in might be interested in applying. And just to note that the law does allow current members to reapply and be reappointed, as has occurred recently with members Lynch and Robinson and Vice Chair Kerwin. So just wanted to provide that update for everyone, and we will share that information out next week as soon as we have it. Does anyone want to say anything or have any questions?
Well, we will meet again before the current members rotate right off that have, yeah.
We have a meeting in June and right. Yes.
Okay.
I would like to just mention that I know that, as you mentioned, Executive Director Heiss, that the last 3 vacancies were filled by current members. I will not be putting my name in the hat. So there will definitely be a vacancy for those folks out there who are considering applying. So it's not a waste of time to apply. It's a exciting opportunity, and I encourage folks to put their name out there.
Yeah, we'll have a lot more to say about that member Sacred a little bit later on. Yep, thank you. As well as member Doss as well. But we'll meet again in June, I think.
Right. Great. Thank you. Okay. So that is the end of the agenda.
Okay. All right. Thanks everyone for a very informative meeting today. We covered a great deal. Let me again thank our outstanding staff, and I want a special shout out to our attorney, Heidi Duderer, for her outstanding work in guiding us through a very challenging waiver process. I think she placed us in a good position whereby it was informative, it was well laid out, and I think it placed us in a position that we can defend this with a great deal of confidence in what we've done. Because I think she recognized very clearly that this may be an ongoing process, and so we needed to provide a sample of a process that we can all feel very proud of and if need be followed. So let me thank you again, Heidi, for the tremendous amount of work in guiding us through a very challenging process. It's also for all of the board members who chipped in with ideas and suggestions. I think at the end, it paid off very well because it will probably be an ongoing challenge for us, but we've laid a very good platform for how we can move forward. So as a staff, board members, and especially our attorney, thank you so very much. And you can also share some of the comments that we received from some of the public who witnessed the entire process. So thank you very much. Okay, at this point in time, let's have further comments. entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second motion.
I'll second it.
Moved and properly second that we adjourn. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, we're so adjourned. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.